Imagine two guys in their 80s still belting out the same timeless tunes on stages worlds apart. Legal papers keep them from performing anywhere near each other. No shows within a month in the same town. One pockets millions per night. The other scrapes by on a fraction. They crafted some of the rawest, most unforgettable rock anthems in history, yet they haven't exchanged a single word since the early 70s. What broke them wasn't fame. It was something far more personal. Picture this. Two kids who once shared dreams, guitars, and late-night jams. Best friends turned bitter enemies. A lawsuit that dragged on for decades. An album deliberately tanked to prove a point. And one explosive night in a packed arena that sealed their fate forever. Success didn't just strain their bond, it shattered a brotherhood. This is the heartbreaking tale of how glory tore a family apart. He came into the world in the spring of 1945 in a modest California town. Third of five boys squeezed into a cramped home that echoed with tension. Dad pulled exhausting hours at a printing press, hauling in barely enough to cover basics. Mom graded papers at the local elementary, earning even less. Cash was tight, but the real poison was the booze. Bottles stashed in cabinets, arguments exploding like thunderstorms. By the time he was 9, his parents called it quits after one too many drunken blow-ups. Dad shuffled off to a rundown spot across the bay, where weekend visits felt awkward and empty. Silence hung heavy there, broken only by confusion. One day, at a baseball game, Dad dozed off in a haze, missing the kid's only homer ever. That sting lingered, fueling lyrics years later about kids born in a privilege. School offered no escape. Strict rules at the Catholic Academy felt like a jail sentence. Speak out of turn? Kneel on cold floors for ages. Bathroom breaks? Strictly limited. With a shy bladder, accidents happened weekly. Classmates mocked him relentlessly as he sat in damp clothes until dismissal. One nun forced a pointed hat on him after a mishap during a quiz. He dropped weight fast, stress eating him alive. Mom stayed silent, never confronting the teachers. That buried pain resurfaced in adulthood. Endless rehearsals with no pauses, every minute micromanaged. A switch to public school brought relief and new faces. He clicked with a drummer in language arts and a bassist in woodshop. Thursdays meant guitar classes upstairs from a tool shop taught by a no-nonsense folk player. Lessons cost a few bucks, critiques brutal but honest. The instructor flat out said the kid lacked rhythm, no innate gift, and jacked up the fee. He showed up anyway, determined. Summers meant murky creek waters, waiting patiently for a bite. One big catch thrashed in a pail until it faded, a memory that bled into melancholy songs about rivers. In a small suburb of 25,000, rock and roll fever hit hard. Pocket money went to vinyl singles at the record store. First buy? A Wild Little Richard track. After endless pleading, Mom financed a basic guitar and amp on payments. Dad dismissed it as foolish, offering zero support. Practice happened solo in the chilly garage, hours on end until fingers raw. Complaints flooded in, cops called more than a dozen times in a year. One marathon session ended with Mom hurling the amp in frustration, only to fix it later through tears. His big brother, already gigging locally, invited him into a group. But during a holiday show, Bro roasted his awkward moves over the mic. He bolted, hiding in a restroom for nearly an hour. Stage fright rooted deep. Resentment deeper. Betrayal struck when Bro hawked the guitar for cash to score drugs, never replacing it. The folk split left practical scars too. Visits to a bug-infested apartment. Finding Dad slumped over in misery. Mom's new husband enforced curfews on noise after dinner. Locked in his room, he'd jam silently, sometimes losing himself so completely he didn't notice another accident. One epic riff session sparked an early original. At 16, he nearly bolted to the city with saved-up bills, but Mom dragged him back, embarrassed in public. Things ignited when he teamed up with his new pals, forming a trio inspired by harmony hits. Gear was junk, space freezing, but they poured soul into 5 weekly practices. A school contest cracked his voice on a cover, but an instrumental scorcher electrified the crowd. A connected parent got their tune spun on radio waves, reaching ears far beyond. Gigs trickled in, though sales flopped hard. That flop ignited his songwriting fire. Brother joined, snagging lead sings, but the kid had already penned a handful. A rehearsal clash over vocals led to a firm line. Originals stay mine. Tension simmered, whispers of control issues. Early releases bombed. Frustration peaked at a party gig when gear failed. He smashed it publicly, worth weeks of pump jockey pay. Then, a label deal in 1964. Signed blind, no legal eyes. Rights surrendered for peanuts. Name twisted to something offensive without input. Gigs in diverse venues drew jeers before note. He brainstormed alternatives, gripped tighter on decisions, rehearsals turned obsessive, halting for flaws, one drum part redone nearly 90 times. Others muted their gripes on the edge of walking. Flop singles piled up, pay laughable. He snuck tapes home for fixes. Draft calls hit 2 members. He landed reserves, scribbling dozens of ideas in downtime. Return meant total command, arranging, multi-tracking, marathon days. Brother sidelined again. Tracks improved, but harmony crumbled. An early single gained local traction, recut for debut. Label tried wiping originals, he safeguarded copies. Name evolved to evoke roots and renewal, but another ironclad contract locked them in worse. First album dropped modestly, budget skimpy, chart peak low. But a reworked swampy cover stretched long, hypnotic locals in one dawn take. It climbed steadily, gold certified. Boss ignored. Road warriors logged hundreds of miles in a rattling van. Cheap motels. Opening slots wowed with explosive energy. Sets clipped short. No extras. Magic preserved. Requests for tweaks denied. Rhythm called invisible strength. Brothers' input minimized. Volume buried. Royalties revealed. Pennies split. Label feasting. Fury vowed hits to overwhelm. War declared. Rights reclaimed decades later. Second record exploded. Platinum swift. Iconic river anthem born in storm. Imagery borrowed from books, nailed quick. Covers by legends funneled cash elsewhere for years. 3 albums in 1 year, pressure mounting. Peaks high. Anthems of inequality scrawled in minutes, rage pure. Upbeat doomsday tunes contrasted live. Tours sold out, jams extended, but vetoes on opportunities bred boss vibes. Control absolute. Writing, producing solo. Studio a war zone, input demoralizing. Success soared, but payouts paled against label hauls. Giveaways for freedom, payments frozen quarter century. Buyback recent. Peak year. Top 10s, festivals, TV spots. Anti-war cries from personal haunts. Burnout loomed. Next release dominated. Millions moved. Lawsuits over similarities settled quietly. Voice strained permanently. Brother sing request denied. Absence followed by blowout fight. He exited mid-year, final duties grim. Follow-up shifted experimental. Overdubs loon. Solo pleas erased, unseen. Fury confirmed dictatorship. Sales massive, but shares tiny versus label fortune. Legal review demanded millions owed. Bandmates balked at risks. Isolation led to dissolution threat. Crowds roared, no returns. Encore's phony. Grueling tours, health crashes, parts patched. Last single penned in motel, charted high. Final gig tense, tears captured unseen. Ultimatum. Equal shares on the next, seen as revenge or forced fairness. Pressure for material, deliberate duds to escape blame. Sessions chaotic, contributions amateur. Hand up, hands off. Contrast glaring, glue missing. Reviews savage. Revenge album, worst ever. Charted on legacy but rep tarnished. Encore demands ignored. Leaders stormed off last show. Breakup announced publicly. Bandmates blindsided. Post-split silence. No old hits for decade. Millions lost. Persuasion from peers resumed. Others furious at scraps while catalog cashed in. Blame public. Album disowned. Solo ventures. All instrumental, anonymous, quick but sabotaged. Follow-up home recorded. One hit massive via cover. Next rejected. Paid to shelf. Self-plagiarism suit. Absurd. Guitar demo in court. Win. Perrick. Comeback chart topper. Label attacks and lyrics. Renamed under duress. Anthem eternal. Earnings huge despite bans. Dark years. Isolation. Booze. Rants. Gear sold. Rivals revived hit Sansom. Sued over name. Kids unaware of legacy. Brother's death from tainted transfusion. A strange 20 decades. Gifts returned. Pleas ignored. Bedside too late. Guilt eternal. Bills covered quietly. Recent reflections, ego blamed, credit hoarded, barriers extreme. Proximity close, contact nil. Forgiveness conditional? Unlikely. Journals of grudges kept. If this story tugs at your soul, the raw pain of lost bonds mid-triumph, share it far and wide. Let others feel the weight. Today, elders perform echoes separately, paths barred near. One thrives financially, the other modest. Same melodies bind them in eternal quiet. A glance from shadows unmet. Legends linked by music, divided by unbreakable silence. What a tragic waste of what could have been. Hit like if it moved you. Subscribe for more untold rock heartbreaks. Share to spread the sorrow and the songs.